Cheeseheads. Get on your feet. It's Curd and Long. Hosted by Sparky, Fifer, and Ryan Horvath.
Welcome in. It is another edition of Curd and Long. Steve Sparky Fifer with you for 12:50 a.m. The Fan. Of course, Wisconsin Sports Daily now, brand new, just started this week. Monday through Friday, weekday afternoons from 2 to 5 p.m. And then, of course, after every Milwaukee Bucks basketball game, we also have going on right now the Potawatomi Sportsbook Pro Hoops post-game show served up by Wendy's, back in action after each and every playoff game throughout the postseason. Joining me now, special guest in place of Ryan Horvath. He is Eli Berkovits, Packer Report, PackADay podcast. Follow him on Twitter at bookofeli_NFL. Eli, thanks so much for coming on, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, happy to be here, Sparky, as always. Appreciate the invite. Really excited to get into this draft for the Packers because it's a big one and a lot of interesting storylines going around.
No doubt. Before we get into the draft and all these mock drafts circulating, draft's coming up again this Thursday, so it'll be here before we know it. I want to talk about this Kenny Clark situation. So I see on social media that everybody needs to stop talking about trading Kenny Clark. And I was like, what are we talking about? So I literally went into Google. I put Kenny Clark trade search. And I found two that I talked about in the last Curd Long podcast, one of which was Lombardi Ave, their website, that brought up essentially a second-round pick this year to the Packers, and not a second-round pick, pick overall 30th pick in the first round from the Niners, and then they would also get a pick next year in the third round. That was the first one. So let's start there. So essentially 30 this year, a third round next year for Kenny Clark, who's in the last year of his deal. Eli Berkovits. Now, again, these are not real. This is made up trade. Would you do that if that was the offer?
So again, just to be clear, it's 30 and a third next year for Kenny Clark straight up? Or
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct.
I mean, I don't think the Packers should or are looking to trade Kenny Clark, but I think if they got offered a first-round pick for him, they would probably go for it. And then you add a third. I mean, I think they'll jump at it. I love Kenny Clark. And again, not saying they should trade him, not saying I think they will. But if they get offered a first-round pick, Goody gets offered a first-round pick for almost anyone. He's going to want to do it.
I agree. There's no question. And then we had a Cowboy fan over at Fansided. He wrote even a better trade for the Packers. His trade was a second-round pick from the Cowboys, which I think was 56. And then you get the first and fourth from the Cowboys next year in 2025. You're talking 3 players for a guy going in the last year of his deal in Kenny Clark. There is no chance that Goody doesn't say yes to that. I mean, they offer, he goes, yeah, yep. I don't think about it. Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, absolutely. I'm setting it in. Set it in. See you, Kenny. Somebody set up a suitcase. Get him out of here. I mean, you have to do that. I like Kenny Clark, but he's not Aaron Donald.
No, I mean, you got either of those kind of offers for a player like Kenny Clark, and again, in the last year of his deal, which is a big part of it. Like, that's something that, like you said, there's not even really a conversation to be had. You're making that deal. Again, I don't think either of us would expect the Packers to get offered such a haul for Kenny Clark, but in a world where it did, yeah, they're going to go for it.
All right, let's talk about Kenny Clark now specifically and forget about this trade nonsense. How much do we really want to pay Kenny Clark? Because I've always been of the belief I'll pay my quarterback, and they're going to pay this quarterback $45, $50 million a year, somewhere in that area. That's going to be a lot of money. I'll pay a stud wide receiver like Devontae Adams. I'm fine with that. I'll pay a stud left tackle. I'm fine with that. Now, right now, you have no money attached to a wide receiver. You have no money attached to a left tackle for the next 10 years because you got rid of Bakhtiari. So Rasheed Walker or a draft pick, that's not going to be anything. Then on the other side of the ball, shutdown corner, Jair, fine. Pass rusher, Rashawn Gary, good. I would never pay a safety a ton of money. They did. And I get it, and I'm fine with it. Xavier McKinney. I don't think I can justify somebody that isn't a premier pass rusher on the defensive line giving a lot of money to. I mean, last year you had brought Brooks in, you've got Slayton, you've got Wyatt. You're in prime position to add another defensive lineman or two possibly in this draft, maybe in the first 2 days. I don't know if I'm all in on, we got to pay Kenny Clark a bunch of money for another 3 or 4 years at age 28 or whatever. I feel like I'm okay if they don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really will depend, number one, how this last season under this deal for Kenny goes. also how they decide to approach this draft. I mean, there are a couple of interior linemen that are first-round prospects. I'm not expecting that's the way they go, but then again, I didn't think they would draft Devontae Wyatt where they did, so you never know. But Kenny Clark, I mean, really is coming off basically the best season of his career, 7.5 sacks, which is a career high in tackles for loss. He was, I mean, really impactful. Still looks really just like has a lot of burst. I feel like this year, maybe more than ever, there were just plays where at this instant the snap was going. Sorry about that. The instant the snap went, Kenny was shoving that center or guard, whoever's in front of him, 2 yards into the backfield and really making impactful plays behind the line of scrimmage. So if they draft an interior lineman or Kenny has a bit of a down year, yeah, I don't think they're going to give him another massive extension. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they try to just work on his deal this offseason and give him an extra 2-3 years. And you know how they are. They'll backload it. They'll do some void years just to kind of lower the cap hit this year. So Kenny Clark, I would lean towards he's going to be on the team for more than just one more year, but I also wouldn't be floored if it was not the case.
You know, and that's the thing, right? So that's where Goody has to figure out what he wants to do, because do you let him just walk and you get nothing for him, or do you entertain trade ideas? And then what is it? You got a third for Rasul Douglas. He should bring you back more than a 3rd round pick. Again, like we were just talking about, he's still in his 20s, and whoever he goes to in free agency is going to give him a lot of money. So if he isn't in Green Bay, somebody else is going to pay him. And if somebody trades for him, it would have to be with the idea that they're going to extend him immediately with whatever the number the agent wants is upon that trade, which should raise his trade value at the same point. I understand he's the best guy on the defensive line. I'm not going to sit here and argue one way or the other. I just have a problem paying big dudes in the middle of the line a ton of money unless they're getting, 10, 12 sacks a year or something like that. Otherwise, I'll just get couple of big wide bodies. Let's push the pocket back, stop the run, and go from there. They haven't stopped the run really at all while he's been here. I don't see how much it really changes this year either.
Yeah, I mean, Kenny Clark, that is definitely, I think he would be considered much more of a pass rushing interior lineman as opposed to a run stuffer. That's just kind of how he's always been in his career. So, yeah, I mean, I understand the thought process where we have some really premier positions on this team that maybe right now you're not committed a ton of money to. But like you said, you're about to do it for quarterback. It might not be tomorrow, but I think Zach Tom is on a trajectory to get a pretty big deal at some point in the near future. And then these receivers, one of them or maybe even 2 of them are going to end up, really blossoming and getting probably bigger deals with the Packers. So, again, these aren't all this year issues, but if they want to start thinking, about the future, keeping this roster young, they're going to have to make some moves. We see it every offseason. Some guys we don't think they would ever get rid of, they get rid of. So I wouldn't put anything past Goody. I still think Clark's around longer than shorter, but maybe not, for 4-6 more years.
Well, he's under 30 still, so that gives him in good favor with Goody. So maybe Goody extends him a couple of years to get him to like 31 or something like that, and then that's the end of it. All right, let's talk about this draft because we've been talking about moving up, moving back. I am a proponent of moving back because moving up, okay, well, if I'm moving up, it better be for premier left tackle. I'm not moving up for a right tackle. I'm not moving up for a guard. I don't know necessarily. Is there a corner that is that guy? I don't know if there's a corner is that guy. There's some good corners, right? Mitchell's a good corner and so forth. I don't know if they're shutdown corners. So I struggle with that. I don't know if they can get up high enough to get the kid from Penn State. I don't think so. Alt's probably going to go to Tennessee, everybody thinks. So I don't think they're going that high. But at 25, those group of players are probably all relatively the same, probably from 25 to 32, 33, somewhere in that area. So, I mean, if somebody wants to move up 5-6 spots and you can pick up a 3rd round pick this year, next year, whatever, I think I would be open to doing that and going backwards. What about you?
Yeah, I totally agree. I just tweeted earlier today about the Washington Commanders. They have picks 36 and 40 and 3 picks in the 3rd round. So they are a prime candidate to move up. They may draft their quarterback of the future early and then want to come back in and get one of these tackles at the end of the 1st round. So if the Packers can get 2 of those day 2 picks from Washington for 25, move back to 36, and then whatever other pick you have. And then you still have so many picks that you could trade up either at the end of the first round, late 20s, 30 even, or trade up at the top of the second round like we did for Christian Watson, or just simply wait there, don't trade up, and then have, maybe 6 picks on day 2 and just really add a ton of talent to the roster. So there's just so much flexibility for Goody this year. With the amount of picks he has, I think he could really, if they wanted to, they could kind of like control the draft sort of the first 2 days, really make a lot of big moves, or they could just pick 5 players in their spots and, add 5 good players immediately.
And I like that idea. I'm fine with drafting 5 good players. I'm good with that. You hit 3 of them, and it's a great draft. No matter what happens on day 3, you don't have to hit any of those. You get 3 starters or 3 impact players on day 1 and 2. I'm ecstatic. Okay, now, do you think this is a defensive-heavy draft yet again for Brady Gutekunst as they try and fix the defensive side of the ball?
I do think with 11 picks, yes, the majority of them will be defensive, but I think, again, let's say they take 5 picks on those first 2 days and they don't do any trading. I wouldn't be surprised if at least 2, maybe even 3 were on the offensive line / offensive side, maybe a running back being at the end of day 2. But I think offensive line, if they draft 10, 11 players, there could be at least 3, maybe even more offensive linemen. And then you could look at a running back, and then kind of the rest of the draft, I think, will be defensive. Maybe a late quarterback. I don't know if I'm drafting one, but I think they might. But yeah, I think early on, as much as there are offensive linemen that excite me and a lot of versatility and high RAS scores, which I'm sure we'll get to, I'm kind of still leaning that they go cornerback in the first round and then lead it off defensive.
That's interesting because I think that's where a lot of people are right now is cornerback. And if it is cornerback, then I really want them to trade back because of what's going to be there by the time they get there from a cornerback perspective. I don't think it's going to be Mitchell. I don't think he's going to be there. I don't think these top corners are going to be there. I think these guys are going to be gone. Now, Kool-Aid McKinstry might still be there. That's probably a possibility. Wiggins might still be there, the cornerback from Clemson. I could see him possibly still being there. But again, if you move back a few picks, I still think, you can end up with a pretty solid corner. Your thoughts on a guy that I don't want, but it's seemingly everybody else does, Cooper DeJean from Iowa. What say you about him, and where would you play him, corner or safety?
So I understand the controversy over him because if you just watch the highlight reels and you look at his numbers and his testing and his stats, it's like, wow, this guy is like one of the best players I've ever seen. But then you dig a bit deeper, and there are some issues with his game. I would say specifically when it comes to man coverage, he can read a route and play a quarterback well, but you get some of these faster, bigger receivers in the NFL, I think he could struggle just keeping up with them. I think they could just kind of get vertical on him, stack him a bit, and he gets a little bit lost, tracking the ball deep downfield. But then again, he does have great ball skills. So if he gets near the ball, there's a good chance he's going to come down with it or at least make a play on it. I kind of see him playing safety, honestly, at the NFL level. Maybe he gets tried out at corner, but I just think he translates better to safety. And I know safety, people say, not a very valuable position. You don't draft it in the first round. They traded up for Savage. Obviously, didn't really work out that great. But I would not be upset if they drafted DeJean and just played him at safety and that was their plan from day one. I would rather that than draft him and play him at corner, but they're not sure, and then switch him in year 2 or something. If you're going to draft this guy, I hope they just have a plan for it before they do it. And because of that, where there's just a lot of uncertainty about what he's going to do in the NFL, I almost just feel even though everyone's mocking him to the Packers and it feels like such a Packers pick, I kind of feel even if he somehow makes it to 25, I just don't think they're going to draft him, honestly.
Lions will move up for him. That's my prediction. My prediction is Detroit moves up and takes another Iowa kid in front of Green Bay, thinking Green Bay will take him. So they trade up in front and take him before Green Bay has to deal with him. All right, let's talk about corners. You like him. Well, you want him to take a corner. So who's your favorite corner as far as things that you've seen mocked to the Packers at 25? Is it Kool-Aid?
So yeah, I think it would be Kool-Aid for guys that realistically can be there for the Packers. It's very close for me between Kool-Aid and Wiggins, because I really like Wiggins, though just his style of play. Obviously, his size is a bit concerning, just like will the Packers want to use a first-round pick on a corner that at the combine weighed 173, which is very, very, very light. But at his
Take him
pro
to
day,
Kroll's, give him some burgers. He'll be
yeah,
fine. We
exactly.
can fatten him up. And there's all kinds
Yeah.
of places we can bring him to fatten him up. We'll add some weight to him. He's not Thon Maker, for God's sakes. We'll get him
Yeah.
bigger.
No, I mean, even a week later at his pro day, he came in and he weighed 182. So it
See?
says, I think
Protein shakes.
exactly. He went down for the combine so he could run a faster 40, which he did, running 4.28, which is pretty great. But yeah, Kool-Aid, he just has, in my opinion, just like some of the best man-to-man kind of covered skills in this class, which we know in Hafley's defense, he's going to put a lot on his corners to be able to play. And he's just, when you watch him, it's just smooth. Like he never really looks stiff or like out of position, just always where he's supposed to be. Not huge ball production, only 2 interceptions, but 23 pass breakups. And a lot of the reason he doesn't have more picks is because from 2022 to 2023, he went from 80 targets to 39 targets. Basically, after having a great 2022 season, quarterbacks just stopped throwing him the ball in his last year at Alabama, which is impressive itself. So he's not perfect. He also, can be a little bit rough, deeper downfield, like just tracking the ball, finding the ball in the air, which is something I feel like we see Packers defensive backs struggle with a lot. Maybe that's just me, but I do like him a lot. I think he just plays with high energy. RAS is not super high, 7.55, but that's not like way far from where Goody would draft. So I still think that would be fine. And then Wiggins, if it wasn't for the fact that he was as light as he is, I think just makes perfect sense. He's very much like Jair, going to be in your face, brings a ton of energy, 9.43 RAS score, very high in that. So he struggles a bit in tackling because of his size, but he's not willing to tackle. Like he'll go and do it. It's just if a guy's able to run him over, that could happen sometimes. But he plays with a ton of energy. So if either one of McKinstry or Wiggins were the pick at 25, I would be very happy.
Let me ask you this. Would you consider moving up for a corner? For Mitchell or for Arnold? Would you consider moving up for either one of those two? Are they that much better than these other two we're talking about?
I personally don't have them that much higher. Like I do have them higher. Like actually, I know Quinyon Mitchell is becoming like the flavor of draft season.
That was Senior Bowl. Senior Bowl is where he took off.
Senior Bowl, exactly. Yes. And now in a lot of people's mocks, he's the first corner off the board. I actually kind of like Terrion Arnold a bit more than Quinyon Mitchell, but I don't know if I like either one of them enough. Like maybe trade up to 22, 21. Like if you just have a feeling you need to jump one team, but I wouldn't jump into the teens or anything like that and give up a huge haul. I would just sit at 25 and hope you got McKinstry or Wiggins. And I think one of them will end up being there.
All right, let's talk about those day 2 picks. We got 2 in the second. First one's at 41. Again, that one at 41, you might be able to use that with the third something and be able to hop back up towards the end of round 1 or the beginning of round 2 by moving up a few picks. When do they take the running back? I had Chad Ryder on our draft analyst from NFL.com. He did a 7-round mock draft. He had taken the running back, Ray Davis from Kentucky, but it wasn't until day 3. He had him falling that far. He had no running backs to the Packers the first 2 days of this thing. If you're Goody, how long are you waiting to get somebody to put with Josh Jacobs?
I don't think you put it this way. I don't think you need to rush it. Like, I don't think you should be waiting until the 5th or 6th round, per se, unless the board falls that way. But I definitely wouldn't, like, if day 2 ends and we don't draft a running back, I'm not panicking. Like, oh, we got to have someone because number one, Josh Jacobs, you just gave him a ton of money, and he's kind of been known to be a bell cow back. Like, that's just his thing. So I do think we're going to see him a lot more than we were accustomed to seeing Aaron Jones. And then A.J. Dillon, I am surprised they brought him back. I'm not going to say I was overly thrilled, but we know, they could give him the ball and it won't be a complete disaster. And also, I happen to think Emmanuel Wilson has some potential. So I don't think they need someone to be like the clear RB2 day 1. But that being said, I wouldn't be shocked at all if 88 or 91 ends up being a running back. If not, I would say 126 seems like a pretty good spot. Maybe like a Tyrone Tracy out of Purdue, a Ray Davis, like you said, Marshawn Lloyd out of USC. There are some options on, early day 3, late day 2.
All right, so I'll tell you, I like Jalen Wright,
yeah,
and he's coming off of a major injury, so we'll see how far he falls. my guy I've liked the whole time, but then when I saw his RAS score, I was like, well, forget Green Bay. Bucky Irving is my guy. I love me some Bucky Irving. But again, if we're saying Green Bay's just going to ignore him because of a stupid RAS score, then he's probably not going to end up in Green Bay. But that dude breaks tackles with the best of them. When we're talking about guys trying to take that guy down, man, it is not easy to get Bucky Irving to the ground.
No, I really liked him, and I had the same kind of reaction as you. Like he was someone that I consistently was looking at on day 2, maybe even early day 3 for the Packers. But you see that RAS score, and by the way, like I'm not someone who fully agrees with. I mean, I trust Goody and his staff. Like I'm at the point kind of where it's like there are very few players every year that I'm like, I really don't want them to draft. Like for the most part, I want to trust that they're seeing stuff and they know more than me, because I would sure hope they do. But the RAS score, it's just like, unfortunately, you kind of do have to really write off a lot of these guys. Like, sure, day 3, maybe they'll go outside of what they normally do. But if you're looking to make a pick in the top 3 rounds, it's really hard to like confidently predict a guy that has a RAS score like Ingram or like Irving.
Yeah, no question. And that's something. Now let's talk about a big fat guy. T'Vondre Sweat. This dude is a mammoth human being. Back in, I think it was January, Chad Ryder was like, don't be surprised if T'Vondre Sweat's that Packers pick. Then they go out and get Halfley to be the defensive coordinator. Then we got our guy T'Vondre going and telling everybody, hey, man, I don't party no more, man. I'm going to get serious. I'm going to go to the NFL. I got this. And then he got ticketed. Okay.
Yeah.
So now I don't know how far he's going to fall. But I will say this. If Goody decides he wants him in day 3 and he's sitting there, you're the general manager of the Green Bay Packers. You're not in Chicago. You're not in Atlanta. You're not in South Beach. You're in Green Bay. How much trouble could this dude possibly get into partying in the snow? Like, I don't think it's enough to scare me off if I'm Green Bay. Now, if you're in a big market with a lot of nightlife, okay, maybe you think twice about it a little bit, I guess. But if I'm Green Bay, it doesn't shake me. And this dude can flat out play. Now, I worry that he eats his way out of the league, but I don't. I mean, you put him in the middle of that line, you're going to stop the damn run. You're going to have a lot better chance than you do right now.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, you want to talk about someone who, like almost like, Cullen Jenkins, Ryan Pickett back in the day, put him in the middle and just stuff up those running lanes. He's not going to really rush the passer. He's not going to do a bunch of explosive things, but he will make it very difficult to run the ball up the middle, which is nice.
And he'll push guys back.
Yeah, he'll definitely get some penetration on, centers, guards, all that. And the Packers do kind of need, their nose tackle of the future. Because Kenny Clark has never really been that one technique nose tackle. Slayton's entering the last year of his deal. I actually did really like how he played last year, but
so did I.
I wouldn't be shocked, if they're not re-signing him. And then Devontae Wyatt, another player I actually really liked last year, he could develop into a bit of a nose tackle. But like T'Vondre Sweat, like a few months ago, there was talk, like second round pick, all that. That's kind of gone down because his RAS score came out, and that was obviously
awful,
pretty rough at 4.15. So if he does fall to day 3 and it's the 4th round, maybe even the 5th, and he's there, like that's at that point, you got to look past those kind of testing and say, okay, could this guy have the upside to make serious change in our run game, which we need and have needed for years? And I think it's yes. So if you could get him at a good value, I am certainly not going to complain about it.
He can play first and second down. Pull him off the field on third down. Just play him on first and second down. On third down, he runs off. Brooks runs in, whoever. And on passing downs, he comes off. I mean, to me, it makes all the sense in the world. Now, whether or not they view it the same way, I have no idea. Okay, let's talk about another position that I'm intrigued by. Let's say they don't take Cooper DeJean at safety.
Mm-hmm.
I love Hicks at Washington State.
Yes.
Big fan. I like Bullock at Utah, or Bishop, I should say, at Utah. I like him. There's a lot of people digging on Bullard, the safety from Georgia, and are ready to ride with him. Who are the safeties you like in this draft?
So you kind of hit the one that I feel like it just feels like the most Packers-y kind of pick, and that's actually Jaden Hicks. I know a lot of people are high on Cole Bishop, and I do like a lot of Bishop's play. I do get just a little bit nervous with his just coverage ability. Like I don't really have any.
Yeah, he's a box safety.
Yeah, exactly.
for
Like,
sure.
so
Yes.
if you want to just put him in the box and have him chase down running backs and make tackles near the line of scrimmage and all that, like, sure, I'm in for that. That sounds good to me. And then having Xavier McKinney be the center field safety that you need, like, that could definitely work. And I would be more than happy with that pick. Obviously, super high RAS score makes sense. But Jaden Hicks, for me, I just feel like he has that impact kind of player. We're both great ball skills. He's a sorry. He's a good tackler. He's just an aggressive kind of player. 3 interceptions, 10 pass breakups, 155 tackles. He ran not super fast, 4.50, but as a safety, definitely not too slow. So 8.95 RAS score. I just think Hicks just fits the Packers profile. I'm sure he'll probably at this point end up being a second round pick. I feel like the hype around him and the safety class being so weak, he could end up being a second round pick. So if you could get him at 58, I'm very happy with that pick. But I would also honestly take Javon Bullard also out of Georgia. Like, he's almost become the number one now because of how bad Newbin and Kitchen's RAS scores came out to be. I have Bullard and Hicks very, very close. So I would be pretty happy with either.
Linebacker replacing Campbell. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't have any idea of any of these guys are going to be any good at the NFL level, because there's nobody we're taking in the damn first round. That is for darn sure. And then you start liking certain guys, and they got injury concerns all over their resume. So it's like, well, I don't want to deal with that either. So who are the guys? Who do you like? Tell me, sell me on somebody. Who should I be rooting for the Packers to take, Eli?
I mean, it's pretty boring, but like, it's really Edgerrin Cooper. I mean, for sure at the top.
He's the best.
Yeah, like he's the best. I feel like he's the closest to a real like difference making. Like, again, I wouldn't say first round, but if someone was right at the edge of the first round, it would be Edgerrin Cooper for me.
At 41.
Yeah, 41 exactly. 41, perfect. Right there at the beginning of the second round. 9.26 RAS. It's classic Packers kind of profile. Really good tackler. He just dominated that whole defense for them last year, which was great. Another guy I do like, Junior Colson out of Michigan. No RAS score from him, but you saw the way that Michigan defense played, and he was at the center of it, really leading. You know, I do like drafting guys, and we've seen it with Georgia picks a lot, but drafting guys with real college pedigree that have had real success, have played other top-notch talent, and have gone deep in college football playoffs, national championships. Like, that matters to me personally. So Junior Colson, I don't think you would need him at 41. Maybe 58, maybe even if, we see linebackers fall, could be like a third round option. But one guy that I do see getting a lot of talk towards the Packers is Peyton Wilson. Super high RAS score, all this, but I'm out personally. And I could see your reaction. I am personally out on Peyton Wilson.
Thank you. Good.
As an inside linebacker, he's just too small. He's too light. He gets dragged around too often. In coverage, like, he's a high effort player, high motor. He'll chase guys down and tackle them, which you love to see, but he's not doing like anything special. He's not getting a bunch of tackles for losses. He's not going to blitz, because even a running back, any contact, he's basically done. He weighs 233 pounds. So Peyton Wilson is one of the few players, like I said, there's not many players. It's like, I don't want to draft this guy, but like, if they have to use a second round pick on Peyton Wilson, I would be pretty disappointed.
What about that kid? I think his name's, what is it? Tevin Wallace, the linebacker from Kentucky, I want to say. You like him?
Yeah, Trevin Wallace. Yeah, he has been getting recently a lot of hype, specifically with the Packers. And I've not been able to get as much film on him as I have most of the other class, just because he's been a bit of a newer name that's been coming up. But of what I've seen of him, definitely someone that I just think has a lot of upside. Could be really interesting in half of his defense, like in the 4-3. So I don't know where they will need to get him, probably third, fourth roundish. And if they miss out on Cooper and Colson, that could definitely be their backup option later in the draft.
All right, here we go, because this will be the last time I talk to you before the draft. What happens at 25?
What happens at 25? I think Kool-Aid McKinstry. I just think the Alabama cornerback, Alabama defensive back is something that it's just kind of a staple in the NFL, like a very reliable. They produce great defensive backs consistently. He has all the testing that the Packers like, just a very Packers kind of pick. I almost want to go Wiggins, but I'm a bit nervous about the size and injury history. Might scare them off. I think McKinstry, also for half his defense, just his ability to really play man coverage and press up when they're going to want him to. He's one of the best in this class, maybe even the best in my opinion. So I think McKinstry is an easy pick at 25, and I would love to see that.
He is Eli Berkovits. He's calling Kool-Aid for the pick at 25. I might pour a cup of Kool-Aid. I think I'm going to have a thing of Kool-Aid sitting next to me. So that way, when they draft me, I can just pour a cup of Kool-Aid and cheers everybody on Twitter or something like that. Hey, man, book of Eli _NFL Packer Report. I got their draft guide. Just talked to Jacob Morley on the air this week. Tweeted it out. Get your draft guide now. It's what, $8.99 or whatever it is. Gets emailed right to you. Take advantage of that. PackADay podcast. And Eli, you got another show too that you're doing, right?
Yeah, the Pack. You can find it on Twitter at the Pack_show. We just recently had Paul Brettel come on. We should have a couple interesting guests for draft week and post draft. So keep an eye out for that on Twitter and at my page, Book of Eli _NFL. I'll put out all the links over there.
Everybody loves Paul Brettel. One of the nicest people I've ever met.
Really good.
Just
really
such a good dude. Follow again Eli at Book of Eli _NFL. Follow me at Sparky Radio. Kurt and Long. Download it on your Odyssey app, wherever you download your favorite podcast at. And of course, check us out on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page. Have a good weekend. Toodles.